Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to explore how to transform what feels like this impossible mountain of saving $10,000 into a completely automated, totally stress-free system. We'll be looking at strategies that master both our minds and our money. Look, if you've ever tried to get your savings in order and just felt like you hit a brick wall, trust me, you are not alone. A lot of the time, it's really just about shifting our perspective and setting up the right habits. So let's dive into this journey together and look at the actual practical steps everyday people use to hit this massive milestone.
All right, so let's tackle the absolute intimidation factor of this goal right head on. If I were to ask you right now, how do you eat 10,000 slices of pizza? Well, whether you're firmly on Team Pineapple or you absolutely despise it, the only correct answer here is one slice at a time. And you know what? We have to apply this exact same logic to our finances.
Because let's be totally honest with ourselves, $10,000, it feels completely out of reach. For everyday Americans dealing with crazy high rent, expensive groceries, credit card bills, and just the general pain of inflation, saving even a few $100 can feel like an absolute nightmare. So, setting a massive, daunting goal from day one, it just isn't realistic for how our human brains are wired.
But what if we reframe this? Eating that metaphorical pizza one slice at a time means realizing that $10,000 a year is really just saving about $833 a month. And if you break that down even further, it's literally just $27.39 a day. When you look at it like that, suddenly this doesn't look like an impossible mountain anymore, right?
Now, to actually pull off saving that daily amount, we're going to have to use some Jedi mind tricks. We need to fight off this psychological phenomenon known as present bias. This bias is basically the thing that constantly tricks us into sabotaging our future wealth just for a quick thrill today. It's totally human nature to value an immediate, fleeting reward right this second, way more than a much larger, life-changing benefit a year down the road. But by keeping that big $10,000 goal in the back of our minds while we just focus on executing that small daily amount, we actually condition ourselves to fight off this bias.
And honestly, finding that daily $27 and change is incredibly doable through just small, everyday choices. It's simply a series of consistent decisions the person sitting next to you probably isn't willing to make. Like cooking a meal instead of eating out? Boom, that saves $10 to $15 right there. Packing a thermos of coffee instead of dropping money on a fancy oat milk latte saves another $5. You can cut those unused streaming subscriptions, maybe take the bus instead of grabbing an Uber, or, hey, host a game night with your friends instead of dropping $100 at the bar. The math adds up incredibly fast when you start looking for it.
All right, moving into Section 1, Your Brain on Money, focusing on the psychology of spending.
So billion-dollar companies actively manipulate our emotional banks to keep us broke, and we really need to learn exactly how to flip the script on them. You see, these massive companies hire entire teams of behavioral economists just to figure out what makes you tick. And what do? They exploit the pleasure chemical dopamine. We usually think that dopamine hit comes when we actually buy an item, but studies show it actually triggers during the anticipation of the purchase. I mean, think about it. Notice how quickly you completely forget about that shiny new item once you actually own it? The positive feeling just abruptly stops. It's crazy.
Look, we all struggle with instant gratification and impulsive personalities to some degree. It's perfectly captured by this classic Oscar Wilde quote, "I can resist everything except temptation." He hit the nail on the head. When retailers use classic tricks like those flashy on-sale signs, or when they set those tricky free shipping thresholds just to make you spend a little bit more, they are playing directly into this deeply seated human weakness. So the crucial point here is figuring out how to defeat this urge without feeling like you're in a financial prison. You do this by implementing what's called the not now but later list. It's super simple. When you see something you want, you let your dopamine get its little fill by just adding the item to a list. And then you simply wait 30 days. Research shows that an amazing 92.7% of the time, after an item has been on that list for a couple of weeks, you realize it was literally just an impulse decision and the urge completely vanishes. Now, if you still actually want it after those 30 days, okay, permission granted to buy it.
And this brings us to a really massive mindset shift regarding what spending actually is. Most people out there think savings is just your income minus your expenses. Pretty standard, right? But author Morgan Housel argues that savings is actually your income minus your ego. Let that sink in. Look around your room right now. Did you buy something just to one-up a friend? Spending way beyond basic materialism is often just a reflection of our ego, a way to show people that we have money. Which means the absolute quickest way to save isn't necessarily hustling to raise your income. It's actually raising your humility. That brings us to Section 2, Define Your Financial Why and Gaining an Emotional Advantage.
But let's be totally honest with ourselves for a second.
All of these behavioral tricks, the lists, the ego checks, they're all going to eventually fail if you don't have a deeper meaning anchoring your habits. According to author Simon Sinek's concept of the golden circle, knowing the mechanical how to save comes completely secondary to your emotional why. Research actually shows you are 3 times more likely to save if you use an emotional advantage. For instance, maybe your why is dedicating your savings to giving your hardworking parents a life where they never ever have to worry about money again. You need a deep sentimental connection to your core values, so you're saving for a personal reason, not just because a budgeting book told you to.
Okay, moving on to Section 3. Build your savings system and how to automate your wealth.
All right, so now that our mindset is basically bulletproof, our ego is in check, and we know our deep emotional why, let's pivot. Let's talk about the actual mechanical systems needed to absolutely guarantee you hit that $10,000 goal. The absolute first step is knowing exactly where every dollar goes. Because, you know what they say, you can't improve what you don't measure. So, after tracking every single expense for 30 days, you're going to sort your money into the classic 50-30-20 budgeting rule. That is 50% for needs like rent and groceries, 30% for wants, and a strict 20% for savings. And the real secret sauce here, you have to treat that 20% savings slice as a mandatory monthly bill that absolutely must be paid. No excuses.
However, to guarantee that that 20% actually gets saved, we have to bypass yet another massive mental roadblock called loss aversion. This is the psychological reality that the pain of losing $100 feels significantly worse than the joy of finding $100. It's wild, but it's true. So naturally, anything you do that physically takes money away from your immediate checking account is going to trigger that pain and feel like a serious loss. So what's the workaround? The solution is Guideline Automation. We are going to take your willpower completely out of the equation. Literally, the moment your paycheck deposits directly into your checking account, an auto transfer immediately splits that money into your spending and your savings accounts. Then, at the end of the month, any leftovers are just swept right into a high-yield savings account. Think of it like charging yourself a self-tax. You're funding your future financial freedom before you even have the chance to lift a finger, or more importantly, before you even have the chance to feel the pain of a loss.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, Accelerate Your Wealth Growth, and how to hit that $10,000 even faster.
Okay, we've built the foundation, so now let's look at some truly actionable strategies for accelerating your timeline. Listen, skipping a $5 coffee is great for building the habit, sure, but coffee isn't what's keeping you broke. Housing, transportation, and food, these are your 3 biggest expenses. If you can negotiate your internet bill, maybe find a roommate, refinance some debt, or just commit to cooking more at home, you are targeting the absolute heavy hitters. Cutting just one of these major expenses often saves way more than cutting dozens of tiny ones, creating massive, massive leaps in your savings rate.
And if you want to push even further, you got to remember that saving alone has its limits, but earning more, that changes the whole game. Accelerate your wealth by taking on some freelance work or starting a side hustle. At the same time, you absolutely must eradicate any high-interest credit card debt. I mean, paying 20% interest means your hard-earned money is actively working against you. Also, make sure your automated savings sit in a high-yield savings account so you can earn that sweet compound interest. And above all else, just stay consistent. The first $1,000 is always the hardest part, but trust me, the momentum builds so rapidly from there.
Just look at the future value of your money. It's crazy. If you take $5,000 today and buy a big impulse item, like a luxury watch, in 20 years, the financial value of that move is zero. Zilch. But if you take that exact same $5,000 and invest it into the S&P 500, generating an average 10% return, in 10 years, it's worth nearly $13,000. In 20 years, it balloons to over $33,000. The power of time and compounding is just absolutely staggering when you sit down and look at the numbers.
So as you go out and implement these automated systems, start tracking your budget, and begin eating this $10,000 pizza one slice at a time, I want to leave you with one final very important thought. Before you go and buy that next big impulse item, just ask yourself, is the fleeting dopamine hit of proving your wealth today really worth sacrificing the ultimate peace of mind and financial freedom for your future self tomorrow?